How's it going there, folks? So I'm here again with Stephen Potter, and we talk a bit about what was going on this summer with the Black Lives Matter stuff around defunding the police primarily, and the judicial system, the justice system, kind of how all that stuff can look, and the whole parts of the political correctness in our society, and what it looks like now with all these people staying at home with all this time on their hands to comment on people's Facebook and things like that, and some other truth bombs that he drops. It's really a banger, this one. I enjoyed it, and he shares some personal stuff as well. Kind of gives you an idea of some things. So it's very good. Hope you enjoy it.
How do you see political correctness, this language policing or whatnot? What I see it as, how does this play into politics, and how do you think it
We
got to
have
this
an
point?
upset world that has an opinion about everything and a lot of time on their hands for the most part. And then you've got the people that are actually struggling to live day to day. So
Yeah.
in our over-bloated arrogance, we have the option right now to point fingers at people and tell them that they should say different things and shouldn't be the way that they are. Part of what we're rebelling against is that we have been telling people throughout time, be yourself, but not like that. It's great to be black, except for when you talk like a black person. Love whoever you want to, as long as I don't have to look at it. How does that work?
Yeah, freedom with restrictions.
Yeah, totally. You're fully free to be as long as I'm not around you. And as long as your behavior doesn't insult my sensitivities.
So it's control and also creating the illusion of freedom with boundaries.
Well, it can. The problem is that if we would take the time to really listen to the people that aren't us, and I mean across the board, if black people listen to white people listen to black people, etc., if we actually shut up and listen to the view of the other person without having an opinion about it, just getting their point of view, 90% of this whole thing would go away. Because the escalation of violence is a way to dominate not being heard. People don't yell if you hear them the first time. So if you hear people the first time, they don't have to yell. If they don't have to yell, they don't have to punch you in the face. If they don't have to punch you in the face, they don't have to light your store on fire. If they don't have to light your store on fire, et cetera, war. So if we started with just getting that, you've got a lot of enraged, hurt people across the board unilaterally. The cops right now, I have so many good cop friends of mine that are just what it takes for them to get out of bed in the morning when their whole life is dedicated to serving the country and serving their constituents. That's their whole life. And they're horrified, and they're equally as powerless to do anything about it because they're not the chief of police. They're not the ones that put together the reform. They're not in politics. So you've got a bunch of really great guys and women who are just there to do their job the best that they know how with the training that they got. And then you've got the people that are there because it's a power trip and they like to shoot people. That's also true. But psychopaths going into the armed forces is not a new thing. Some people sign up to be in the military just because they know they'll get to shoot somebody else. We haven't had a problem with that. So there's an institutional issue. For one, we don't truly mediate anything. And what I mean by that is we don't bring things to completion where if you're looking at crime, it doesn't get solved. It gets declared. So it's like, you're guilty, pay your fine, call it good. Or you're guilty and the victim gets nothing, call it good. Or you're not really a victim, shut the hell up and go home. We don't actually complete anything. We just pronounce stuff. That's the nature of law, is that somebody who's a third party pronounces, you did that crime, Luke, even if you're falsely accused, deal with it. It's now branded on you for the rest of your life. Or even if you did do it, it's now branded on you for the rest of your life, and now that's who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes it easier with the amount of people and crimes and stuff. It's like, all right, check that box and then move on.
Exactly. So it doesn't
Like
actually
arrests.
solve anything, and it doesn't actually restore anything. If you look at
Yeah.
Amsterdam, for example, and you should probably do a fact check thing here because I haven't looked into this in about 6 years. But when they first looked at, okay, we're going to legalize prostitution and we're going to legalize drugs, and the whole world was like, what are you doing? Now, I'm not saying we should legalize prostitution and drugs. I'm just saying, as a small case study in a very tiny nation that's not as big as ours, what they did was they started making heavy drug use into the mental health issue, took it out of criminality. And so if you got found to be in a large possession or something like that, they put you through rehab and therapy instead of sending you to jail. And then all of a sudden, the jails were freed up a lot. And if we actually looked at what's really happening in the nature of addiction, the police force is not equipped to deal with drug addicts and crazy people. That's not what they're equipped for. So they're equipped to deal with people that are trying to kill you. That's what they're equipped for. So they're equipped to keep the peace, end things swiftly if need be, and are trained to protect you and trained to protect themselves. That's their training. Outside of that, they're not being trained expertly in psychology or drug addiction or any of that. And so that's one of the major reasons why you have so many different psychological task forces and stuff right now that are saying the police need to have better education. The police need to have this other training. And in Europe, they do that. They do 2 years of, and this is an overgeneralization, but there are many countries that do psychological training as well as combat training, as well as so that they're a little more well-rounded. And that might be of use if we thought about that. But what we're dealing with is people who are ill-equipped to actually deal with situations outside of what their training is used for. And then there are the complete psychos that shouldn't have a gun anyway. So we got to deal with it on all kinds of different levels than what's just on the surface. It's not just about shooting people in the back anymore. It's about looking at what had us get to this level of breakdown and how do we actually redesign the whole thing. Because that's what it's really going to take. It's not going to take defunding and demilitarizing, and all that stuff is valid, but it won't work. And it won't work because you're dealing with the same status quo that we have right now. There really are. My adopted brother was a huge meth addict. He was 6'4". He was a drug dealer, and his friends had guns that the cops didn't have. I saw them myself. That's a reality. And if they came into my brother's den with his boys and that shootout happened, the cops may or may not have had a shot. That was absolutely real. So we can't have them not be able to win in that type of situation. But when you're going into a domestic violence issue, which may or may not have guns, or you're going into, somebody crossed their lawn and they wanted their neighbor to get the hell off their lawn, they do not need automatic rifles for that kind of a situation.
Yep. Yeah. Well, people are very emotionally attached to racial issues with their white guilt and their white shame or whatever. That's,
I guess. I think a lot of that has to do with we're over generalizing things. And what we're pointing to is that people are not equipped to deal with what's happening. If you have gone your whole life under an illusion that everything is hugs and bunnies, and then you find out that people who don't look like you do not have your reality, that's called a break in reality. And it's disorienting. So you have lots of people that are right now completely disoriented because their reality is in a huge break. And it started long before COVID, but right now, since most of us are at home, we have time to think, read, be anxious, drink a lot. We have room that we have spent predominantly chasing our own tails to pay our own bills. And so now that it's not having to drive to work an hour and a half this way or other way or whatever that it is. There's all this additional time and bandwidth that people haven't had until now. And so if you don't fill that time with something, it's going to kind of take over itself. So we've got a lot of people that are like, oh, you know what? I've been feeling angry and repressed for the last 30 years. And now I got a lot of time to chew on that. And now I got stuff to say about it. It's not a problem. It's just what's happening. And we're not contextually awake enough as people to understand that what's happening is a lot of what has been in the background anyway is just now rising to the surface. But since people didn't know how to deal with it then, and we didn't have to, now that it's in the foreground, now we're writing a bunch of books and trying to research things and
Facebooking all
absolutely.
over the place, and
As
then
if-
everyone
as if that's going
tries
to do
to
a damn
argue.
thing. So
keyboard arguments.
Absolutely. You know what would actually probably make a bigger difference would be if we shut Facebook off. And people got into libraries again and actually access their own research. And why I said earlier that everything I have the best evidence around eugenics possible. You want to know why?
Why?
Because it's their resource material.
Yeah.
Everything that I use is a document or a image out of the eugenics archives itself. There's no disputing it because they published it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure people could find a way to discredit that
It's straight out of the eugenics archives. How you discredit it? It's like,
I don't know. That's just how people are.
You can't discredit it. It's impossible. Literally, I am the founder of the eugenics archives. This is our shit.
Yeah.
Eugenicarchive.org.
Yeah, I guess I'm pointing to where I see a lot of human beings' minds of just immediately discrediting the person or the source.
Sure.
And because they're emotionally attached to hating Trump or just some other aspect of reality.
Totally. But Trump is a walking eugenic billboard. His grandfather would have been a part of a lot of the major movement of it. His great-grandfather would have absolutely been around during the creation of it. And all of those guys, you want to talk about a conspiracy, they had a conspiracy to deal with poor people. It had nothing to do with race as itself. They hated poor people. That's why concentration camps are not a big deal to them. If you were feeble-minded, which means you had a lower IQ, or you were a criminal or poor, you were an undesirable. So while we're busy chasing the race card right now, they're saying, we'll sterilize any of y'all. We don't care.
Yeah.
So when they say we don't care about race, that is exactly what they mean. So then in full conscience, they can stand there and say, it's not about race for us, because it's not. You're lesser, period.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that one. Feel free to check out more videos from this interview with Steven and some other interviews I did with him. And there are more to come with him. Always, he's just got all the information that I could ever want. So I'm going to talk to him more. And if you like it, give it a thumbs up, comment below, and subscribe to the channel and all that YouTube stuff. Take care of yourselves, guys. I love you all. Happy awakening. It's here. Enjoy it. Take care. Peace.